It's our lifeline, 3 numbers we teach our children to trust above all others. A direct line to help in a moment of pure desperation. When you dial 911, you expect answers. You expect help to arrive. But what happens when the call itself is the beginning of the puzzle? What happens when the cry for help becomes the mystery? Today, on Top 10 Planet, we're not just looking at crimes or disappearances. We're listening to the final, frantic moments that preceded them. These are the top 10 most bizarre 911 calls that led to a mystery that has never been solved. Top 10. The Springfield 3. Our list begins not with the call for help, but with the chilling silence that followed one. In June of 1992 in Springfield, Missouri, 2 young women, Susie Streeter and Stacy McCall, had just graduated high school. They planned to celebrate at a friend's house before heading back to Susie's home, where her mother, Cheryl Levitt, was waiting. They were last seen around 2 a.m. The next morning, friends concerned about their whereabouts entered the house. What they found was nothing. The beds looked like they'd been slept in. Their cars, keys, and purses were all left behind. The only sign of anything unusual was a broken porch-like globe on the front steps. But the most bizarre clue was on the answering machine. A friend, attempting to call the house, accidentally erased a strange incoming message. She only remembered it being a strange message from a man with a weird voice. Police believe this call may have held the key to what happened. Was it the abductor? A mistaken call? We will never know. The 3 women were gone, and a bizarre, erased message was the only call left behind. Top 9. Henry Maccabee. Sometimes the mystery isn't in a call to 911, but in a desperate call to a loved one that functions as a final, terrifying goodbye. This was the case for 32-year-old Henry Maccabee. After a night out with a friend in Minnesota in 2015, Henry was dropped off at a gas station. He then called his wife, who was out of state, leaving her a voicemail that is nothing short of bone-chilling. The call begins with moaning and sounds of agony. Then a chilling, guttural roar or growl is heard, followed by a voice saying "stop it." The call then goes silent. That was the last anyone ever heard from Henry Maccabee. His body was found in a lake 2 months later. The police ruled his death a drowning, but couldn't explain the contents of the voicemail. Who was telling him to stop it? And what was that inhuman sound in the background? The call doesn't provide answers, it only creates terrifying questions. Top 8. The Diane Schuler Case. This next call is bizarre because it captures the exact moment a family's reality shatters. In 2009, Diane Schuler drove the wrong way for nearly 2 miles on the Taconic State Parkway in New York, causing a horrific crash that killed herself and 7 others, including her daughter and 3 nieces. For years, the world debated why, but one of the most haunting artifacts of that day is a 911 call made by her brother, Warren Hance, the father of the 3 girls who died. Minutes before the crash, one of the nieces called her father, Warren, and told him Aunt Diane is having trouble seeing and is talking funny. Warren then called Diane, who told him they were on the side of the road, but they weren't. Warren then made a frantic 911 call, trying to get help, explaining the situation. You can hear the confusion and rising panic in his voice as he tells the dispatcher what his daughter said. In the background of the 911 call, you can hear Warren's wife asking, "Is this a joke? Is this a joke?" It wasn't. The call documents the final, confusing moments before an incomprehensible tragedy, a mystery of human behavior that continues to be debated to this day. Top 7. Leah Roberts. In March of 2000, 23-year-old Leah Roberts was at a crossroads. Following the recent loss of her parents, she decided to drop out of college and embark on a soul-searching journey, inspired by the beat poets like Jack Kerouac. She packed her Jeep Cherokee, left a note for her roommate reassuring them she'd be back, and headed west from North Carolina, leaving a trail of gas receipts and ATM withdrawals. He reported a serious car wreck. Leah's Jeep was found at the bottom of a steep embankment, heavily damaged. But the scene made no sense. There was no blood, despite the violence of the crash. Blankets had been hung inside the windows, like curtains blocking the view. More bizarrely, her belongings, including thousands of dollars in cash, her driver's license, and her cherished cat, were scattered around the scene. A box of cat food was found, but her cat was never seen again. The car's starter had been tampered with. This wasn't just a car crash. The 911 call alerted police to an accident, but what they found was a staged scene of a disappearance. Had Leah met with foul play on the road, or did she engineer her own vanishing act, leaving a Kerouac-esque mystery in her wake? Top 6. The Sodder Children Fire. On Christmas Eve, 1945, in Fayetteville, West Virginia, the Sodder family home was filled with the joy and chaos of 9 children. But in the dead of night, around 1 a.m., a fire broke out. George and Jenny Sodder, along with 4 of their children, managed to escape the inferno. 5 of their children, however, were trapped on the second floor. What followed was not just a tragedy, but a series of impossibly strange events, starting with the 911 call that could never be made. When the mother, Jenny, ran to the neighbors to call the fire department, she got no response. Later, a telephone repairman would confirm that their line had been deliberately cut. Desperate, the father, George, ran to get his ladders to rescue the children from the second-story window, but they were inexplicably missing from their usual spot. His final plan was to pull his work trucks up to the house to climb on them, but neither of the trucks, which had worked perfectly the day before, would start. By the time the fire department arrived hours later, the house was a pile of ash. And the most baffling part, in the rubble, investigators found no bones, no teeth, no human remains of any kind for the 5 missing children. For the rest of their lives, George and Jenny believed their children were kidnapped, not killed in the fire. The absence of a 911 call was the first sign this was no accident. Top 5. Blair Adams. In July of 1996, 31-year-old Blair Adams, a construction foreman from British Columbia, Canada, suddenly became convinced someone was trying to kill him. His behavior grew increasingly paranoid. He told friends people were spreading rumors about him. He withdrew his life savings, nearly $6,000, and emptied his safe deposit box filled with cash, gold, and platinum. His goal: to get out of the country. He tried to cross the U.S. border in his car, but was turned away by customs officials who deemed him suspicious. Undeterred, he bought a last-minute, expensive plane ticket to Frankfurt, Germany, but inexplicably abandoned his plan at the airport. Instead, he rented a car and drove south, ending up over 1,000 miles away in Knoxville, Tennessee. And that's where the 911 call comes in. A construction worker called to report a gruesome discovery in the parking lot of a hotel that was still being built. It was Blair Adams. His body was found stripped naked except for a pair of socks. His pants were turned inside out nearby, and thousands of dollars in Canadian, American, and German currency were scattered around him. He had died from a violent blow to the stomach. The mystery is staggering. Who was he running from? Was the threat real or imagined? And how did he end up dead and violated in a Knoxville parking lot, so far from home? Top 4. Usha Degree. She was known as the Little Sweetheart of Shelby. Usha Degree was a bright, cautious, and well-behaved 9-year-old girl from Shelby, North Carolina. She was known to be scared of dogs and afraid of the dark, which is why what happened on Valentine's Day in the year 2000 is so deeply incomprehensible. In the middle of a stormy night, while her family slept, Usha quietly got out of bed, packed her book bag with a few personal items, and walked out into the pouring rain and darkness. The 911 call the next morning is every parent's absolute worst nightmare. Her mother, Aquila Degree, calling the police, her voice breaking, reporting her child is gone. An investigation was launched, and what emerged was bizarre. Several motorists reported seeing a small girl matching Ash's description walking along the dark highway in the middle of the storm. One driver even turned around, concerned, but by the time he got back to the spot, Usha had run off the road and into the woods. A year and a half later, her book bag was discovered, double-wrapped in plastic bags, buried at a construction site 26 miles away. Why would a girl terrified of the dark walk out into a storm? Was she lured out? Was she meeting someone? The 911 call from her frantic mother kicked off a mystery that remains a painful open wound in her community. Top 3. Brandon Lawson. This is perhaps the most infamous and debated case ever to center on a 911 call. On August 9, 2013, Brandon Lawson, a 26-year-old father of 4, had an argument with his partner and left their home. Around 1 a.m., his truck ran out of gas on a remote stretch of Highway 177 in West Texas. He called his brother for help, but then he made another call. To 911, the recording of that call is a desperate, breathless, and frustrating enigma. He tells the 911 dispatcher, "Yes, I'm in the middle of a field. He sounds panicked. He says he needs the cops. There's one car here. The guy's chasing me through the woods. Please hurry." Then his words become garbled, filled with static and heavy breathing. He seems to say, "I ran into them." Other interpretations claim he said he ran into me. He mentions the first guy. He says something that some believe is "I got stabbed." Then, a phrase that sounds like "chased him out of the woods." The call abruptly ends. A sheriff's deputy was dispatched, but found only Brandon's truck. Brandon himself was gone. He was never seen or heard from again. Was he having a paranoid episode, or was he running from a very real, very deadly threat out there in the Texas darkness? Number 2. The Burger Chef Murders. On a cool November evening in 1978 in Speedway, Indiana, four young employees were closing up the local Burger Chef restaurant. Their names were Jane Freed, Daniel Davis, Mark Flemings, and Ruth Shelton. They were all between 16 and 20 years old. They were supposed to clean up, lock up, and head home. They never did. The 911 call didn't come that night. It came the next morning from another employee arriving to open the restaurant for his shift. He called police to report a strange scene. The restaurant was empty, the back door was unlocked, and the safe was open with hundreds of dollars missing. At first, police treated it as a simple case of teenage employees robbing the place and taking off for a joyride. The 911 call reflected that initial mundane assumption. But 2 days later, the horrifying truth was discovered. The bodies of all four employees were found in a wooded area over 20 miles away. They had been brutally murdered. The investigation was plagued with mistakes and missed opportunities. Suspects were identified but never charged. The 911 call that morning didn't report a murder. It reported an inconvenience. But it was the starting pistol for one of Indiana's most infamous and heartbreaking cold cases. Number 1. Charles C. Morgan. And finally, our number 1. A case so bizarre, so tangled in threads of espionage, organized crime, and conspiracy that it sounds like a rejected Hollywood script. Charles C. Morgan was a respected escrow agent in Tucson, Arizona. But according to his family, he led a secret life, allegedly laundering money for a powerful crime syndicate. In March of 1977, he vanished for 2 days. When he returned, he was a changed man. He was mute, handcuffed, and could only communicate with his wife by writing on notepads, claiming his throat had been coated with a hallucinogenic drug. He disappeared again shortly after. 3 months later, on June 18, 1977, a 911 call was made. A woman had discovered a body in the desert outside Tucson. It was Charles Morgan. The scene was baffling. He had been shot once in the back of the head, but bizarrely, the medical examiner ruled it a suicide. He was wearing a bulletproof vest. He had a handgun with him that was not the murder weapon. Clutched in his hand was a $2 bill. On it were written several Spanish names, a reference to a Bible verse, and the letters ECCE. The 911 call reporting his body should have been the end of the story. Instead, it was the beginning of a rabbit hole involving secret government agencies, the mafia, and a mysterious woman known only as Green Eyes who later called a TV show, claiming to know the truth. The call didn't solve a mystery, it opened a Pandora's box. A cry for help, a confused report, and an inexplicable silence. Each of these calls is a fragment of an unsolved puzzle. They remind us that sometimes the final moment of contact doesn't bring clarity, but an eternal mystery that haunts us decades later. The voices may have faded, but the questions they left behind remain. Which of these cases left you with the most questions? Do you have a theory? Let us know in the comments section below. And if you enjoy diving into the world's darkest mysteries, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Top 10 Planet. Thank you for watching.